Hey, welcome! Today, we're diving into a story that's thousands of years old, from the book of Genesis, but you're gonna see it feels like it could have happened yesterday. We're talking about Jacob, his escape from a really manipulative father-in-law, and what his story can teach us about dealing with injustice, having endurance, and ultimately finding vindication.
But before we really get into the weeds, let me just ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe at work, maybe even with family or friends, where you knew you were giving it your absolute all, but you just felt completely overlooked? Or worse, like someone was taking advantage of you? Just hang on to that feeling, because it's right at the heart of what we're about to explore.
Okay, let's jump in. Our first section here is all about what we're calling an unfair exchange. This long season where someone's dedicated service was met with straight-up injustice.
So, just look at this timeline for a second. We're not talking about a bad week or a tough month for Jacob. We're talking about 20 years, 2 decades. He works 7 years to marry Rachel, then gets tricked into marrying her sister, Leah. So what happens? He has to work another 7 years. And after all that, he spends 6 more years building up his flocks, all while his father-in-law, Laban, is just constantly changing the rules of the game.
And get this, 10 times. Laban changed Jacob's wages 10 different times. I mean, that number is just so stark, right? It tells you this wasn't some simple misunderstanding. No, this was a deliberate, ongoing pattern of exploitation. It was basically designed to keep Jacob under his thumb while Laban got richer.
And you know, this ancient feeling is so incredibly modern. Lee Carle, whose reflections are really guiding us through this story, she puts it so simply. I often felt more discouraged than encouraged. And that feeling of just being worn down, of having your spirit chipped away by the very people you're around all the time, that is the heart of this story, just brought right into our world today.
So what was the actual breaking point? Well, that brings us to section 2, the changed countenance. This is that critical moment when the whole atmosphere just turns to ice. This slide is fascinating because it nails a universal human experience. On the left, you have the ancient text. Jacob literally sees it on Laban's face. His whole vibe is changed. And on the right, the modern translation. That sudden cold shoulder you get from someone, that icy distance you can't explain. It's the exact same painful feeling, thousands of years apart. So you have to ask, why the sudden shift? Well, here's the powerful insight. The favor vanished the second the one-sided benefit stopped. Think about it. As soon as Jacob started to prosper on his own, through God's blessing, and Laban couldn't take advantage of him anymore, that friendly mask just fell right off.
So what do you do when you're treated like that? Do you freak out? Do you try to get even? Let's look at section 3, God's unseen hand, which suggests a totally different path, choosing prayer over panic.
And let's look at this modern example from Lee Carle's own life. She was all set to perform, but then she finds out her vocal part was just cut, secretly, without anyone telling her. And in her words, it was confusing and hurtful. But her first move wasn't confrontation, it was prayer. She took that hurt feeling straight to God, who actually pointed her to this very story about Jacob. And the result? Her performance was so incredibly powerful that it earned praise from professionals over and over again. Talk about divine vindication.
And you know, the hurt wasn't just that one big thing. It was this whole pattern of smaller, painful moments. The secret changes to the music, the hot and cold treatment from people, that feeling of being judged when someone seemed to look over her clothes with disdain. And of course, having to deal with gossip. It's those little, sharp cuts that can sometimes hurt the most.
The theologian Matthew Henry gives us a really powerful way to think about this. He says that God can basically restrain the malice of other people, even if those people themselves never actually have a change of heart. And that is such a crucial idea. God's protection isn't always about fixing your oppressor. Sometimes it's just about building a shield around you so their junk can't actually hurt you.
And this all leads us to a really important point. Let's dig into section 4, vindication over vengeance, because there's a huge difference between defending yourself and just seeking revenge. You know, when Jacob finally confronts Laban, he doesn't explode. He basically just presents the facts. Look at this. He calmly lays out his track record, his integrity, his diligence working in extreme heat and cold, his honesty in covering losses from his own pocket. He's not screaming for revenge. He's just quietly and confidently speaking the truth about his 20 years of service. And so the real lesson here is this massive shift in perspective. It's about moving away from the human drama and toward this deep confidence in divine help.
It boils down to that timeless question, really, if God is for you, who can truly be against you?
So how does this 20-year saga of conflict finally end? Well, our last section is called The Covenant of Peace. And the resolution here isn't about one side winning, it's about making sure the harm stops for good.
So Jacob and Laban, they build this pile of rocks, and they call it Galid, which means heap of witness. It might just look like a pile of stones, but it was an incredibly powerful symbol. It was a physical line in the sand, a witness to their promise that from that day on, neither of them would cross that boundary to hurt the other.
And this right here is the whole key. Jacob could make this deal, this promise not to retaliate, because he didn't need to get even. God had already seen what he went through, God had already defended him, and God had already given him the victory. He was totally free to just walk away and move forward, without needing to look back for revenge.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. What if those really hard seasons, those years where you feel completely overlooked and taken advantage of, what if none of that is actually lost? What if, kind of like Jacob's flock, a different kind of prophet, maybe spiritual or emotional, is being collected by God, just waiting to be released at the perfect time?
And we'll end on this powerful, powerful declaration from Lee Carle that just sums the whole thing up. I don't need retribution. God sees all. God holds all. I trust him. I obey. It's just this statement of quiet, unshakable confidence, this belief that no matter what other people might do, the real justice, the real victory, is in hands that are so much bigger than our own.